All right, cool. So tonight we are going to be discussing Dylan Koch and the things he's been working on in 2022. I've known Dylan for a few years now. So I'm going to ask questions kind of relevant to the topics tonight. And I appreciate you joining us. If you want to just start out, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're located, and how you got into real estate.
Yeah. So I'm from like the Lima, Ohio area. I moved down to Cincinnati in 2011. I did 6 years of pharmacy school, got my doctorate in pharmacy, did that for 5 years. And then October of last year, so just over a year, I went full-time in real estate as an investor, agent, and wholesaler, really. My first investment property was when I was still just graduated school, June of 2018. I bought a house hack duplex in Oakley, lived in one side, rented out the other. Basically I went down the personal finance rabbit hole because I decided like, I'm going to make decent money. I should know what to do with it. Dave Ramsey, the whole 9 yards, discovered Kiyosaki, and then decided on real estate was the best avenue to try to pursue like long-term wealth. Then last year, to make the big switch, basically there's 2 reasons. 1, I hated my job. And 2, I guess I have financial ambitions that a non-scalable career will allow me to get to. And then we had enough savings, and my wife and I were on the same page. So I was able to jump ship, and it's been a wild ride for the past 12 months. Been able to do 24 total deals in the last 12 months with basically just myself and a couple of VAs. And that includes 13 wholesales, 3 flips, 7 rentals, and 5 or 6 agent transactions. So that's the best synopsis I can give. Feel free to ask questions based off that.
No, thank you. That was great. That was my next question was, what have you done in the last 12 months? And I know I recently saw you post, I think on Instagram, you had kind of a snapshot of your year to date and all the things you accomplished, which is part of what prompted me to ask you to join us tonight. So you said about a year full-time in real estate?
Correct. Yep. Okay. Left end of September of 2022.
Awesome. Okay. And how many deals had you done prior to going full time?
Good question. Probably about 15.
Okay. So you're already doing some of the wholesaling. And when did you get your license?
Not until this past May.
Okay. So you've only had a license about 6 months.
Yeah.
So you had started doing some of the direct to seller wholesaling stuff, I guess, in 21.
So we started doing 2020 and 2021. I was doing that with some partners, and we did have some success doing it. I will say the market was a lot different than it was how it has been the past 6 to 12 months. And it was a lot of a team effort back then, where we had basically one person dedicated to do the marketing, and then one person would be the underwriting or the appointments and stuff like that. So taking from that and then having to do it all yourself and build out those systems yourself was definitely still a learning curve. As far as the off-market transactions go, underwriting a deal and analyzing deals, I was still familiar with from just my portfolio growth from 2018, 2019, 2020.
So what made you want to get into the wholesaling?
Yeah, good question. So we first started doing the off-market stuff because we found that the stuff on the MLS, like the first 3 or 4 deals that we bought were MLS deals. And 2 reasons. One is like those deals stopped making more and more sense because we just thought the prices were too high based on the underwriting standards that we had for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then 2, we really wanted to do like the BRRRR strategy to get like really discounted deals. And that way our velocity of money would be quicker. And we figured the best way to do that was to go off market, because that's when you can really get those heavily discounted properties. We figured by the time they hit the MLS, 10 to 15 people had already saw them and passed on them.
Okay. And when you say we, I know you said partners. Now, my understanding was that was other pharmacists that you were friends with, right?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, yeah, tell me a little bit about that experience, that from the time you started wholesaling until you went full time. I guess what were the main lessons learned? And I'm assuming something along that road was what prompted you to want to look at that full time.
Yeah. So I guess what I will say is we weren't doing the wholesaling stuff. Like it was very sporadic. Like it's like, we would send a bunch of letters or postcards like once every couple of months, and we'd see if deals would come of it. It was not systematized by any means. Right. And we would either wholesale it or try to keep it. Since that time, we had like the not the deer in the headlights, but like we were trying shiny object syndrome. We were like trying to do Airbnb. We were going to do residential assisted living, which was another avenue of things. And so it was not a systematized process. And I would say I didn't really learn a lot other than like blast out a couple of marketing and hope you get some deals from it. Now, when it came to the time of, hey, I can do this full time and making this transition, I basically saw that it could be done. There's a lot of people that had done this before me. And I was like, well, they're buying deals at 50 to 60% off market price and basically burning out completely out of all their own money. And if I want to get to the portfolio that I want to and build basically I want to take this to a 7-figure business where I'm not working, 40 hours a week, I can do it 20 and build out a team, then I need to learn how to do this. Mm-hmm. And so I joined actually a mastermind. It's Ryan Dossey's Create Cash Flow. He's been on the Bigger Pockets a couple of times. But his main thing is how do you source off-market deals, build a brand, and build out a business that's strictly based on off-market deal flow and building a portfolio.
Awesome. Okay. So during that time period, and obviously I know you had the partners, but like what would an average deal, you may not have it in front of you, but off the top of your head, ballpark, what do you think an average wholesale assignment fee would net?
So I have those numbers for the past 12 months. But back then I would say it was probably anywhere from, I know we did ones for 2,000 to 3,000. We also did one for 50,000.
Okay.
Right. So it really varied.
Gotcha. And then you were obviously splitting that up with the partnership.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And now you said you were basically operating your business solo.
Yep. I'm doing the list pulling, the accounting, the marketing, the appointments, the rehab projects. Yeah. The whole 9 yards. So it's been really busy.
Awesome. And then I do remember I think a couple of years ago, we did talk about the assisted living thing. So did that ever go anywhere? Did you ever attempt to deal with that?
We did. And we actually were raising money. We were going to syndicate it. And we actually had about $1.6 million raised. Then COVID happened. And that kind of just shut the whole thing down.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So bring us back up to going full time. What did that initially look like? And walk us through a little bit more of the details of, how mentally you shifted from having a pretty cushy full-time job, to going into real estate full-time.
Yeah. I'll take the second part of that question first, which is, so I'm 29. My wife and I don't have kids. We had about 6 months of savings in the account. And my wife is also a pharmacist and her income covers our living expenses. So as I alluded to earlier, I didn't like my job. And I was like, it's pretty much now or never. Like, I don't have these extra responsibilities of life. Give me 6 months. I'll see if I can do it. And if I don't, I can always go back to the 9 to 5, right? Like you said, it's a cushy job. It's not my dream job. And at the beginning, I was 3 months in and $30,000 in the hole without a deal. So it was pretty, I was like, at points I was like, what the hell am I doing? And that first deal that I ended up selling was only 5,500 assignment fee. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm still pretty far in the hole there. So there were times where like the headspace was like, man, I got to just keep going and chugging along or I'm going to go broke.
What was the 30,000? Was that marketing cost or?
Marketing costs, data. I paid for a lot of data up front. And to be honest, at the beginning, I was probably a little need to be humbled a little bit because I just spent money on marketing thinking that it'd take a month to 2 months for that to come back in. But really I call it the cash conversion cycle in wholesaling between marketing dollars out and money back in. One, it varies a ton depending on the marketing channel. And two, it's probably on average, it's probably anywhere from 4 to 7 months. Right. So the cash flow that you're in business is probably one of the most important lessons learned, especially at the beginning like that. But after that first couple of deals, I mean, I've averaged about 2 to 3 deals a month since then. So it was just being consistent and then honestly getting better myself on like going on those sellers appointments. And I found myself like I had to read a couple sales books, like to sharpen my skills on how do you go to these appointments. Because that's more of solving people's problems versus, hey, Mr. Seller, your roof's caving in. I need to redo your kitchen. That's going to cost me $15K. Like those are two totally different conversations. And the former is what like developing the rapport is what the deals come in.
Okay. That makes sense. And so, during that first 3 months, it sounds like you were obviously concerned and thought, you might have to go back into your career. your previous career. So what was your day-to-day life? Like what, so, during that time, what were you spending your time doing? And then what changed, as you became more successful?
Yeah, so a typical day was so most of the marketing, especially at the beginning, was primarily direct mail.
Okay.
So it's sending the letters out and basically waiting for the return calls, right? So it was the miscellaneous stuff like the accounting, setting up the website, pulling list, filtering out data. But a lot of it is lead follow-up. So I have a CRM, and pretty much every day I would try to hit the follow-ups that are in there by either a personal phone call, or text message. And then it's going on those sellers appointments. And I market to Hamilton, Butler, and Warren County. So I could be Batavia, then the city of Hamilton, then the West Side, right? So it's a lot of driving, which is an inefficient use of time. And then going on these sellers appointments, taking a bunch of pictures, coming back, getting out the rehab budget, figuring out what that's going to be, and then basically making this marketing spend, email blasting, finding buyers, and then coordinating. Really, a lot of this part is logistics too, like trying to set up, okay, I have buyers going in and coordinating with the seller on XYZ times and what times work for everybody. Building a buyer's list is another big part of this. I think that was a lot, but that was a typical day. And that's 8 a.m. to a lot of times till 8 p.m. of just trying to work deals.
Gotcha. Okay. So because in my mind, and something I struggled with going from a full-time career into real estate full-time was like, I didn't know what to do with my day. You know what I mean? Like yeah. I wasn't necessarily starting a business, like you were. So I did have more systems in place, but it was almost like I didn't know what to do. I was like, I had been working 80 to 90 hours a week for so many years that like when I was working 30 and everything was kind of running like relatively smoothly, it was like, I felt so out of place in that time. So that's why I was curious, it's like, what were you filling your time with? And so do you have any of your kind of your funnel metrics on those first couple months when things weren't really clicking, or even up to like, let's say those first couple deals?
Yeah.
Like what did that look like?
So let's see here. So the earliest data I have on here is back in December of 2021. So this is like 2 months. So I would have sent out mail in I started in October. So it's probably mid-October, early November. And so some of the calls started coming in December.
Okay.
And so like 29 leads, which only resulted in 3 appointments, which I put 3 offers on, but no deals. Right.
And how much marketing were you putting out? Like what were those, all letters? Were you making cold calls, text?
All letters, especially at the beginning. And it was probably anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 a month. Yeah.
Okay. And so what I'm assuming you're spending like 50 cents a piece.
Actually, it's close to $1.
Oh, okay.
Because they're more the letters and they're like those handwritten ones.
Yeah.
I have done
nicer mail. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So anywhere from like 3,000 to 5,000 letters per month. And in the first 2 months of marketing, you said you got 29 calls and 3 appointments, 3 offers, no deals.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. And then how did that change as things picked up?
So you got to think too, I was at least good at sending out marketing once a month for those first 3 months. And so they start to snowball on each other. And like I mentioned earlier, the deals never come, at least very rarely, on the first touch. It's like you have to talk to these people. And I'm not kidding. There's one on here I've had 122 phone conversations with.
Wow.
Right. And so most of these are 30 to 40 touches before a deal closes. And so that first deal that ended up closing in March was a lead that came in December. Right. So it was 3 to 4 months of follow-up, persistent, that comes up with this. And just when they actually are like the time to sell, you need to be on top of mind. And that's how like the consistent follow-up, I would say, is probably what has helped most of my, like, I get success, the deals I have done this so far. But going on like this, to give you more metrics. So January, I had 32 more leads, 8 appointments, 4 offers, 0 deals. February, 30 leads, 7 appointments, 6 offers, 0 deals. And then March I had the first deal. And then that went into 5 deals in April, 2 deals in May, so on and so on. But these leads are consistently anywhere from 20 to 40 leads a month, 4 to 5 appointments. I try to make an offer on everything, no matter what. And even though I know they're probably not going to accept half, most of them. And then what do those deals turn into?
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. So during that, let's say first 6 months until you close your first deal, was your marketing staying consistent during that whole time? That was still 3,000 to 5,000 letters or so.
Yep.
And then did you, at any point during those first 6 months, did you transition to any cold calling, texting, any other marketing?
Not in the first 6 months. There were times where I would go on like the for sale by owners on Zillow and try to call them and like do deals like that, which I did do one end up like that, but not a good use of time. Like me, you know, for like, it's not really a high revenue generating task. That's something that could be delegated out.
Gotcha.
Just recently, and I mean, as of like the past 2 weeks, I have hired a cold caller and a SMS, both VAs, to do both of those marketing channels.
Awesome. And then Todd asked a good question. He said, how much is too much follow-up? You know, how often are you following up with these people? Is it once a week, more or less?
More, it's more. And it's pretty much until they tell me to stop calling them, I'm going to call them daily.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And now lately, and because of this SMS and the cold calling that I've been doing, I had 92 leads come in October.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm actually behind by about 40 leads right now. And so my next hire is actually going to be like a lead manager. So they can kind of do some of that persistent follow-up, and then they can schedule me appointments and do that's like the next transition in the business. But that was a good question, Todd. And a lot of times, like, they're happy to talk to you, especially the older, you know, the 70-year-old grandma. She loves it when I call. And I know I'm going to be on the phone for 20 to 30 minutes. But at the same time, like, I know I'm probably going to be the first phone call when she is ready to sell.
Yeah. And something, you know, I've always been curious about since I've been in real estate, you know, when you ultimately close a deal with these sellers, what is it that is opting them? I mean, I know there's every situation is different, but if you had to kind of summarize it, what is opting them to work with you to sell their home, whether you're buying it or you're wholesaling it versus, you know, trying to go to the market and list it with an agent?
Good question. A lot of, like you said, a lot of it is deal specific. I've done deals with probate, like divorce, but I bet half of them I've just come from absentee owners, and they just don't want to deal with it anymore. And so I'm kind of able to do the lingo, like, hey man, like, you've been a successful real estate, landlord for 15 years. So I'll go on the appointment, develop the rapport, and like, hey man, like, you can rent this back out or you can list it with an agent. A lot of them don't like to pay the agent fees, and the biggest motivation is they just don't want to deal with it anymore. And so they're willing to give up, you know, thousands of dollars just for the convenience of being a no inspection, no appraisal cash offer. Right. And they are willing to do that. That's probably about half the deals have just come from absentee tired landlords.
Okay. So if I'm understanding you correctly, to simplify it, you are basically just making it easier, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you're making it easier to work with you versus listing, all the paperwork, go to market, all that stuff, photographer. You're making it simpler.
Yeah. Yeah. And timeline's a big one for a lot of people too.
Yeah. What is your average, you know, contract to close?
It's still probably anywhere from like 4 to 6 months from contract. From contract to close, probably 14 to 21 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I know you've bought some yourself. I assume a lot of these were through your marketing direct to seller. Okay. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that. What have you picked up personally that you're holding, and you know, what percentage, I guess, of your total deal flow is stuff you're keeping?
Yeah. So from the past year, I've added 7 units, 1 single family rental, 1 duplex, and 1 4-unit. The single family home was a postcard. He hadn't been in the place in 15 years, and he wanted $200,000 for a single family home in Mason. We walked in, it was a hoarder house, right? Eric Gross was actually in this house at one point. And I've been bought it for 160. We put in 40 grand. It appraised at 240. So I was still I brought like $5,000 after post closing to that. And now it's an Airbnb. It's like 15 minutes from Kings Island. Awesome. Second one is a duplex in the city of Hamilton, close to the new Spooky Nook complex on the west side of the river. Again, turning into an Airbnb, bought it for 100, put 50K into it. We're actually about to refinance that one next week. And then the one that we just closed on yesterday was a 4-unit, also the city of Hamilton. Purchase price is $148,500. In-place rents are about $2,200. And we'll probably spend 50K because we can turn all the 2-1s into 4-2s because they all have separate basements with egress windows. And then so we're going to refinance that one out in probably 6 months.
Awesome. Eric?
I had a question with the Airbnb. So like one of the things that I've noticed is like a lot of, in other areas like Phoenix and stuff like that, those markets that got really hot, is they're noticing the Airbnb demand dropping off like crazy. So that's like one of the things that I've kind of like seen is just like Airbnb in total has like dropped off. And then it was almost like a weird niche where like people didn't want to go to hotels anymore. With COVID, it was kind of a nice way to get a break into a house instead of going to a hotel. Are you like doing anything like when you run those numbers, are you making sure that they run by themselves just as a long-term rental? Like, is that how you're kind of like protecting yourself? And then like, are you doing anything like in terms of, I mean, if the Airbnb doesn't get the same amount of interest?
Yeah. So good question. And so when you ran these numbers, like originally the exit strategy was not Airbnb. It was like, I was just planning on keeping it as a rental. And so the numbers do work for a long-term rental for this property, at least by my underwriting standards. The cash flow is not like super great, but it's I would say a class A area of Cincinnati. So I'm willing to bet on the appreciation on that one.
Okay.
And with that too, I actually let someone else arbitrage this Airbnb. So I don't run it. So I have like no time into it myself. Because I don't want to, like I mentioned earlier, I don't want the shiny object syndrome. I'm trying to focus all my time in this wholesale business. So I still get the increased cash flow and they're kind of running it. But to your main point is, yes, I'm seeing the same thing as far as those Phoenix, San Francisco, Austin, Texas, Miami, Florida, like these hotter vacation markets are definitely taking a huge dip. We need to run at 40% occupancy at like 110 a night for this place to break even. And so we've been well and above that just from the 3 months that it's been running, even with the economic slowdown that we've seen.
Awesome. Todd?
On some of your deals, Dylan, are you doing just assignment fees, or like you said, some of the properties you made cash offers? How are you in terms of your funding? Are you doing private money? Could you speak on that topic for a minute?
Yeah. So out of the 24 transactions, 13 of them have been like straight up assignments. And so that's just, under contract with the seller, a certain price, buyer has it, like it's a written assignment fee. It's on the HUD, like everyone sees it. And then out of the transactions that I've either bought and we're doing the burst strategy, or the flips that we've done have pretty much all been private or hard money, depending on your terminology. But my cheapest borrowing rates, 10%, no points. And I've done 12 and 2, the standard on all those deals.
And then do you try to, just get permanent financing in place after you get it up and running? Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. And I do have a good lender. Happy to share with anybody. It's a commercial product, but they don't have a seasoning period. So I'm able to get my funds out as soon as the rehab's done, hopefully 30, 60 days.
And is that with joint ventures too? Like you were saying with the Airbnb and stuff?
I handle all the financing on the front end.
Okay.
Like I do all the bank and the loan paperwork and whatnot. And then if I have a partner, they'll come in after the fact on the refinance. Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Good question.
Awesome. Okay. So one thing I wanted to touch on was your agent business. I know you got your license this year. So tell me a little bit about that. What prompted you to do that? And how are you kind of utilizing that?
This seemed like a natural fit. And I didn't get my agent to do single family homes in the suburbs. I did it for access to data and to really sell my own flips. And so I've done 5 transactions. All of like 3 of them have been my own like sales. Right. And then most of them have come from basically like I sent out a mailer. They're like, hey, if you can get me this price, I'll sell. Sorry. I'm like, I can't offer you that price based on the cash offer that we're doing, but I might be able to get you that price if you let me list it. And that's worked a couple of times. And the most successful case I've had with that was actually, it will end up now being 4 10-unit apartment complexes that I was able to be the listing agent on. And so that'll be in total 1.65 million in just commission, or not commission, but sale price.
Sales. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. No, that's great. Eric, I know you're doing, you do a lot, gross. I know you're doing a lot of wholesaling, not wholesaling, but you're doing a lot of direct marketing, and obviously you're an agent as well. Are you doing something similar to that?
In terms of like talking to him about, like, I'm an agent as well.
Yeah. Like basically marketing as an investor. And, I know you work with a flipping business. So, are you seeing that kind of ancillary business that you're picking up from, let's say, failed investor, direct to seller type negotiations, but then ultimately, landing as a flip, or I'm sorry, as a listing?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely happens. I would love to get 410 units. So, I mean, if Dylan wants to be next time. No, mine tend to be like crack houses in Hamilton. So typically they're like, hey, I'd love to list this. And I'm like, sorry, man. Like, I'd love to list that too. I actually had one where the guy was trying to sell it to us. And I literally was like, I'm not the person to sell this. And he was like, no, I like looked you up. I want you to sell it. And I was like, really? I like would rather not. And he's like, just send the papers and I'll sign them. I was like, all right, shit. So I like, we ended up getting on. I was like, I mean, it's set to close. It happens, not a ton. Most of the time when I give people a cash offer, they don't want to then have a conversation with me about like, but I'm like, look, I can give you like 60% of what your house is going to be worth when it's all fixed up. They're not like, you're my best friend now. They're usually like, dude, go F yourself. And I'm like, cool, I'll have a good rest of my night. So
yeah, I've had similar experiences. I don't know if I've listed any property that I picked up from direct mail. I don't
to touch on that real quick too. It is kind of a gray area where like I do disclose I'm an agent. Like it's one of the first things I do. Sure. And technically it is supposed to be on my marketing. I'll tell you now it's not. But it is on the website, and it is one of the first things I mentioned when I talk to most people. And that usually is just like a credibility piece to a lot of people that I talk to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's helpful too. If you do it, you can, I mean, one of the reasons that that it actually helps to have your license is you can say like, hey, if I do anything shady, you can actually report me and I can lose my license. Like there's actual repercussions. I'm not handling this correctly, or if I'm not having, so there's like positives to having it. It's just typically when you're taking those investment calls, they usually are not your best friends.
Right. Yeah. You're kind of starting that relationship off typically on a negative foot if you're making a cash offer that would make sense to buy. And then, typically, obviously, as we all know, most of your deals are not going to work out. And then, like you said, you're going to have a negative relationship from there. All right. So there was a few more things I wanted to cover during the interview portion. So now that you've had about a year under your belt, what are your, future plans? Obviously, we all know the market shifted quite a bit in the past year since you started doing this full time. So what are your kind of 6 to 12 month goals, and how are you kind of shifting with the market?
Yeah, good questions. So I am the hardest part right now is disposition, right? Is getting deals that actually even make sense on paper. There's still not buyers out there for a lot of them right now. So I've done a lot of what's deemed reverse wholesaling, where I know what the buyers that buy want, and I will specifically target my marketing to them. And so that way I still have that transactional funding coming in, but I'll still do marketing for stuff that I want to keep. And where I want to go with this business is I just hired that cold caller. I just hired the SMS person. So I am increasing ad spend because I do think we're going to have opportunity to get deals at, discounted prices, especially with this market shift. So I am trying to make it more of a business to offset some of my roles. Like I'm going to hire a lead manager and maybe an acquisitions person, right? And a bookkeeper, someone to take some of this other stuff off my plate. And luckily enough, I think I'm in a position now I can do that comfortably. So increasing ad spend, hopefully increasing deal flow, not only on the transaction side of things, but for myself. And just I guess one example of what you're talking about is there's a 3-1 in Milford, good area. You're familiar with Milford. That was listed at $225,000. I called the listing agent. I offered $154,000. They countered at $170,000 and I took it. Right. So there's just going to be opportunities now, I think, where even on market deals might come back in favor. Right. So it might not just be strictly off market lead gen. You might be able to find deals actually on the MLS.
And what are you doing with that deal?
I'm gonna keep it. Yeah,
Okay.
it's gonna be 1 week. And actually, you mentioned lease option. I think I'm gonna try that as well.
Yeah, I love lease option. I'm happy to discuss that more. It's something I'm just now kind of getting my feet wet into. But so yeah, funny enough, you said that. My follow-up question to that was, what are you seeing in the on-market space? And I agree with you completely. And that's kind of the point of that question is, I'm seeing more opportunity on market right now than off market. Now, granted, my off market marketing is at a much lower rate than yours is. So that's the name of the game in that space. But the MLS and on market listings have definitely shifted quite a bit in the last few months.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And so I have these automatic, now I do have MLS access, so I get automatic stuff that comes in to my auto prospecting in. And there's deals out there that I'm like, there's actually the first time I've actually felt overwhelmed with deal flow. Like I don't have the time of the day to probably underwrite and take all these down. And I guess a good point to that is there's a very large buyer in Cincinnati market. They're a fund who basically is stopping how much, just like they're maxing what they're going to pay their wholesalers at like a certain 5% commission. And I think the reason for that, after talking to my contact, is they're just buying stuff straight off the MLS right now. So they almost don't need a lot of these wholesalers and off market get properties right now. The biggest buyers now are going back to MLS to get deals. So I don't know what else to say other than MLS deals are probably back. And even today, like the Fed raised rates 75 points today. They indicated they're probably going to do it again in December. Rent just came down for the first time on a year-over-year basis. So there's statistics to prove that we're probably not in the worst of it yet.
Right. Makes sense. And Tiwi, I hope I'm saying your name right. Please forgive me if I'm wrong. I know you weren't able to say it earlier. Tiwi, good. Okay. And he asked, how did you train your cold caller and how are you monitoring quality? I know you're paying them based on performance or just like an hourly rate. And I know you said you just started that, so I don't know how much data you have. But.
No, good question. So the cold caller is $5 an hour. Texter is $4 an hour. They're both one's out of Nicaragua, one is out of the Philippines. And I actually paid a service to basically train them for me because I was like, I don't have the time to do this. Okay. So I paid a decent amount of money for them to get trained by another successful real estate investors that have already been doing this for years. And I do have access through Hubstaff is their their payment portal. And then Launch Control is the texting. And then Call Tools is the call platform. And the service that I use basically said, like, here's the outline of, here's a good metrics from cold callers. They should have a 90% the texture should have a 90% delivery rate and like a 12% open rate with like a 1% response rate. So they've given me metrics that I can therefore go back and analyze to see what my people are doing and compare that to what their norms are. Like Joe said, I've only been doing it 2 weeks, but so far numbers have been really good as far as like what the golden standards for those metrics can be.
Yeah. And speaking of which, this is something I forgot to mention earlier or ask earlier. So what are, and you don't have to go super in depth, but briefly, what systems are you using and why, and how has that kind of changed throughout the last year?
Yeah. So at the beginning, it was an Excel sheet, right? But now it's RE Simply for CRM. I use PropStream for most of my list sourcing. And now I actually have another platform called REI Sift, which is like a data stacking platform where you can stack motivations, whether they be high equity, divorce, tax delinquent. You can kind of target your marketing based on the most motivated leads.
How do they get divorce data? Like pre-divorce?
It's public. It's
also,
like
so these are people that have filed and there's a court record, therefore they can match that to the title. Okay. Sure. I'm like, how do people know they're going to get divorced? Like,
no. Okay.
Okay.
Quick side story. Someone actually, not me. It's not me. Someone I know called someone and said, hey, like, I saw you're getting divorced. Like, what are you guys going to do with your house? He did not know yet he was getting divorced. So careful with
filed, but not delivered or notified.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So careful with that. But so there are a bunch of softwares out there now, like the software stack. I bet I have 6 or 7 like platforms now that I use as far as data management, CRM management, for the rentals, like Rent Manager is another one. So there is a lot. There's not all this all-in-one platform, unfortunately, that you can do all of it. Don't do all of it with. Carrot website's another one.
So you are using Carrot?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts with that?
I don't have them do any SEO. I have it strictly for if I talk to a seller to build credibility, like, hey, check out our website. And I did go into it and put some thought into like the about me section. So it is a picture of me and my wife and pictures of Cincinnati on there to just kind of build that local presence.
So they do basically web hosting, and then they help build out your
correct,
landing page or whatever you want to call it.
Correct.
Website.
And you can pay more for them to do like SEO stuff, which puts out automatic articles. I don't do any of that, but you can.
Okay.
One of the only strategies I haven't really done, I haven't done TV or radio ads. Good question. This had me thought of it. With the market shift, you're seeing a lot of people now, even on market. And because I'm in other masterminds, I hear these stories of pay-per-click has been the lowest cost per deal marketing channels lately. And so for direct mail, it'll cost me anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 per deal. There's someone in California who does nothing but pay-per-click is at $300 per deal right now. And that's California. And I think what that is a reflection of there's people on the MLS who are trying to sell their home, who are just typing in, how do I sell my house fast? And if you can be one of those first people, I think that you're going to find the most motivated people at that point in time.
So are you planning to shift into that more?
I am going to try it. Yeah. But right now I just spent the most money in marketing the past 10 days. Like I'm waiting for that to get a little bit recouped.
Sure. Makes sense. And you don't have to necessarily break down each system, but like roughly what are you spending on software monthly?
Probably $600 to $700.
Okay. Yeah. I would have thought more than that. So, okay. That's not terrible. That's your website, all that stuff. Cause Carrot charges monthly, right?
You can do either. They have an annual plan.
Annual or monthly. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. But the texting platform I just did is because I do the highest tier is now it's $800 a month. So that
alone is $800 on top of your.
So it'll probably go be to $1,600 to $2,000 now that I've done these other stuff. Yeah.
Got you. That makes sense.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Real quick. Sorry. Can you elaborate on, because I've stumbled across Carrot in my, the algorithm and my Instagram and all that stuff. Like, can you guys talk about that because I'm somewhat ignorant on it.
Yeah. So
what is the scope of what they do?
Yeah. I'm not the expert by any means. So I'll let Dylan, finish this question, but my understanding, and I've just heard them on multiple podcasts, and I've had some clients who've worked with them, but basically they are a platform that typically works with wholesalers, and they create website, like landing pages for your website. They offer the SEO marketing, like he was talking about, basically trying to make your website the top search website for certain keywords.
Okay.
And I'm sure they offer other services, but like I said, I've never personally worked with them. So,
okay.
But gotcha. Yeah, Dylan just set the link for his if you want to check it out.
Okay.
Dylan, cool. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. Their biggest sales pitch is marketing, and especially wholesaling is broken down to inbound and outbound marketing. Outbound is the direct mail, the SMS, the cold calling, where you're reaching out to the person. Mm-hmm. They wanted you to focus on inbound marketing, where you set up a system and then the leads are calling you. And that's like through the SEO kind of stuff. That's kind of their biggest sales pitch, which actually makes sense. Like if you can set it up correctly, it can definitely work. But anybody and everybody has a Carrot page that does this. And so they kind of all look the same. I would actually say if you wanted to do this, I would maybe go to a different, like a WordPress or something, see if you can make your own.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, one thing you just made me think of that I want, and this isn't necessarily specific to wholesaling or direct marketing, but one thing I've noticed, and I've heard other people talk about it, but whenever you're doing something in real estate or business or anything, and like, it's like really hard. Like, it's just like, it feels like you're just like working out or something. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, you're trying to like set a new, bench PR or something. Like, anytime you realize you have the awareness that you're doing something like that. And the reason why I bring this up, I remember this was a couple of years ago, I was handwriting letters direct to seller. Okay. And I ended up, I think I wrote 100 letters, something like that. It wasn't a ton, but handwriting them, it was a ton.
Yeah. It takes a lot of time.
And I think I ended up buying 2 off-market deals through that. Right. So that's like 2%. That's a ton. That's a huge
amount. That's actually a really good percentage.
Yeah. Even for handwriting, that's a huge, but my point is, I remember, and I was a cop at the time, and I think I was like third shift in the middle of the night, like trying to stay awake, literally just handwriting these notes. And I remember like, this is awful. Like, this is like torture, literally like torture. Like, it's like getting in detention and like having to write lines. That's what it reminded me of. Yeah. And I also realized though at that same moment that like there's not a lot of people in the world doing this. Like there's no way. And the point of all that, back to the carrot thing, is like Dylan said, probably a year or two ago when carrot first started getting popular, it was probably something that was really effective. But like every other kind of, I don't want to call it a fad, but you know what I mean? Every trend in real estate, once everyone's there, like large multifamily's been the last 5 years, it's kind of too late. You know what I mean? So you're not separating yourself from the crowd. But what doesn't ever go away is if you're sitting there willing to write out 100 handwritten lessons until you're cramping up and like literally about to cry. That's not, the thousands of people doing direct mail out there are not doing that. So if you have properties that you're really interested in, I think that's a really good way to target the ones that are, kind of most important to you. Obviously, if you're trying to do a wholesaling business, that doesn't make any sense because it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to just buy a property a year or something, it can be done. And again, whenever you're doing something, it doesn't have to be that specifically, but whenever you're doing something extremely hard, that's going to separate 99% of people out of that. So anyway, just made me think of that. Something I wanted to mention.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's open it up for Q&A for a few minutes. If there's any other questions that we didn't already cover, feel free to jump in. And after that, we'll go to the group discussion.
I think it's a little bit unfair. I already talked to Dylan earlier today, so all my questions are answered.
Yeah. Eric and I got coffee earlier today.
Oh, there you go. Got a sneak peek.
Yeah.
I got one for you, Dylan. So, First of all, appreciate you sharing your story. So I'm kind of in a similar situation, get a pretty decent job and no kids, and I got that job security, right? So I guess my question for you is, what was that biggest challenge or fear as you were transitioning from just quitting that job and that security and doing your own thing?
Going back, because I would admit that I failed. Yeah. So like that was the biggest thing. Like I was like, I can't go back to the pharmacy, not only because it sucks. Like every freaking minute that I was there, I hated it. But at the same time, like I was petrified probably too much of what other people thought of if I failed and had to go back.
Right.
But and the first 3 months were tough, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like the 30,000 in the hole without a deal. Like I was like freaking out there for a minute. I don't know. You just gotta, like kind of Joe said, like when it gets hard, you just kind of keep going. It ultimately worked out. And to be honest with you, like, because I have my wife and her income, that was a big reason why I was able to do this. If I didn't have that, I probably would have waited another 6 months to a year so I could have saved up more money or had more units as a passive income, something like that, to give me a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah, not to steal any of like Dylan's shine, but I was the same way. Like when I first got licensed, I was licensed for 2 years working a full-time job, like good job, saving a ton of money. And literally the only thing that got me out of the job was like I wasn't supposed to be on my phone. And I picked up my phone to answer a client's call and they fired me. And it was like the best thing that ever happened to me. Like I picked up the phone. My boss is like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "You're gone." And I was like, "Oh shit." And then like after that, I was like, thank God. If I wouldn't have picked up that phone, I'd probably still be there. Like it's just at some point you got to get out. Like you'll come up with a million excuses, but if it's something you want to do, you'll figure it
out. And I'll just touch on one thing. I kind of went like jump out the plane and build the parachute on the way down. You could totally like send out some direct mail, like trying to do this as a full-time job. Like there's answering services out there that if you get a call, like one of the most important things is like getting in speed to lead is important in this business. So you don't want to be like the guy that gets a phone call and calls them back in 48 hours. Like you want to probably talk to them the first, when they call you, or 30 to 60 minutes after that. And so there are other ways where if you keep on to the 9 to 5, it almost forces you to be a better business person, because then you're not like, oh, I don't have to hire someone to do this. I can do it myself. Right. So it kind of goes both ways.
Right on. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the points you guys are making, like this is something I don't even know if I've ever publicly talked about at all, but like, so I left my job about a year ago as well. And for the first few months, it was going really well. I mean, like I said, my businesses were all running great. Construction was making a ton of money. The real estate was. So what prompted me into leaving? Two things. I had like my best year ever, and my last 6 months of last year, that 6 months alone was like double my best year ever prior to that. So it was like the real estate sales business was booming. And so I'm like, man, this is stupid. Like, I can't stay my job. Like, that 80 grand or whatever I'm making a year is costing me 200,000 in time on, the time I'm spending there that I could be putting into my businesses. But also then we found out we were having I was having my second kid. So that was kind of the catalyst. But all of that's to say that those first couple months were great, right? If you guys remember, December, January, February, I mean, that was like the peak of real estate. Things were booming. We didn't even really have a winter slowdown. I'm sure Eric remembers, like, I mean, most agents I know were just, red hot still. So, that 6 months of extreme business I had going on continued. Well, I also had like 4 million in sales pending in February, which is a ton. Like, that's a lot, even, it's a lot for me. And all 4 million of those dollars in deals got blown up. So it was like at the end of February, they were all under contract. I'm like, man, I'm going to have a record year. I'm going to sell $20 million or, $30 million in real estate this year, which would be like, big money. And all 4 million of my pending sales went like that. Literally within 2 weeks, rates, I think at that point, maybe went up from like 3.5 to 4 at the beginning. I think at one point, by the time the last deal fell out of contract, they were like 5.5. And a couple of those were like, big multifamily deals where, they underwrote it at 3.75 or 4, and now their lender's selling at 5.5, right? And it was that quick. So all of a sudden, I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? I was just counting my money that was supposed to come. And I don't know any agent that I've ever talked to, no matter how successful they are and how much experience they have, where they're going to think every single deal they have in escrow is going to fall apart, because that just doesn't happen. You might have a couple that fall out, but like, I think I had 6 or 7 pending that were, like I said, like 4 million. Anyway, the point of all this is, because I had been so successful for so long, was definitely not saving as much money as I should. I was buying whatever the hell I wanted to buy. I had 2 major renovation projects going on that I was just cash flowing the renovation, right? So like, I was probably spending $20,000 a month in renovation costs. And so, you do the math at over a few months, and then all of a sudden, all your income stops overnight. It was churn and burn. And it got to the point, I think it was like maybe May, by the time everything kind of finally caught up. But there was a point where, because all my cash was tied up in all of my, portfolio, that I was like, I don't know if I'm going to go pay my mortgage. Like, I would have figured something out to do it. But it was like, I had probably 300,000 out in renovations. Anyway, the point of all this is like, I was at the point, and we were having a baby at this time. So, there's all these stressors coming in at one time. I was at the point where I'm like, I'm gonna have to go get a job. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, so I guess the point I'm trying to make is it can get really scary when you're a full-time entrepreneur. And to me, it's always kind of ebb and flow. And it's your job as a business owner to try to keep everything even keel. So, if you're making 50,000 a month, don't spend 50,000 a month in income, because there's going to be those months where you're making 0. And there might be 3 or 4 months in a row where you're making 0.
Don't count that money before it's in your account.
Yeah.
Like, I am so guilty of that myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's number one as an agent. I had Katie look at me like a month ago when we had a deal that was so smooth. And she's like, that was the easiest thing ever. Day before, ended up not closing. Literally closing was the next day. I was like, don't say that. Closing fell through.
Yeah,
I had the same thing. Though I think the last deal that fell apart during that time was a couple that was engaged, and they literally broke off their engagement the day before closing. So that was the only one. They had already locked a rate at like 3% or whatever, and that was the only one that wasn't because of rates that fell apart. But yeah, like I said, I don't want to talk on this forever, but saying all that, it just reminded me of like how vulnerable I was in that place, and then like 2 months later, everything picked back up. People kind of realized that, okay, rates are going up and they're here to stay. And then, like the 10 buyers I was working with all started buying again. Things worked out fine. But it was that close to being like, I'm going to have to start putting job applications in. And just like Dylan said, especially like, I don't know how pharmacy world is, but the world I came from, the cops, like if I would have had to go back into that, which I didn't plan to, but if I would have had to, yeah, it would have definitely been seen by everyone who knows me as a massive failure, especially in the world I came from. So anyway, I appreciate you sharing that. You know, I think a lot of people, they talk about all the good stuff, and sometimes we kind of gloss over the hard times. And there's
very helpful for sure. Yeah.
All right. Any other final questions? Awesome. All right, let's get into the group discussion here. I will post the questions for all of our first timers.
Dylan, was pros in March, was that your first one, or was that in April?
That was in April. That was like 2 or 3. Yeah.
I thought I was the first.
No,
it's okay.
Marvin Avenue and North College Hill is my first.
Oh, I'm glad I wasn't the first then. Never mind. I'm glad we got the one.
Yours was, I got it right here, 4/8/22, and I made $6,603. Thanks, Eric Cotner and Eric Gross.
There's one listed over there for like 230, but it's been sitting for like 3 months.
Yeah, then no freaking way.
Yeah.
All right. So questions are posted in the chat. If I know several of you have been here before, but let's see. T, were you able to get your mic fixed? No. If you don't mind, if you can just type those, and then that way we can at least get you in here. Angela, you want to start us off?
Yeah, that'll work. So Angelo Solari, I'm located in the Cincinnati area. I'm actually I'm a newbie, so I'm looking to get that first property under contract, hopefully here in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area. As far as my my short-term goals, again, trying to get that first, ideally a multifamily, 2 to 4 units that I can house hack, and then that way free up my primary residence and rent that one out. And then as far as my long-term goals, I'm shooting for $3,000 a month cash flow, passive income, 5 years from now. I think that would be a pretty decent starting point for me. And then as far as what do I want to get out of this group? Accountability, obviously. I think these goals have been pretty helpful so far, keeping me accountable. They're pretty motivating as well. And then I'm also wanting to grow my network and see what connections, and keep learning from each other as well.
Awesome. Kevin, are you there? All right, we'll come back to Kevin. Eric, you want to go?
Yeah. So, hey, everybody. Eric Gross. I'm a real estate agent and also work with a local flipper, run the acquisitions and dispositions for his company. Been doing it for 4 years. Come to these groups because honestly, I came to these groups for like 3 or 4 years before I actually got into it. So just one of those things where I like being able to like talk to people, same situation that I was in. Also get to talk to people. Like I've met so many people and stuff like this that are able to help out. And then obviously like anything we can help with, just reach out. Dylan, if you can send some deals my way, that'd be great. None of the on-market ones, I can find those myself, preferably the off-market ones with tons of meat on the bone. And that's it.
Awesome. Todd?
Hey guys, most of you on here I've met before, and I appreciate your time and information. I think that's awesome. I think our community in Cincinnati is composed of a lot of great people that are willing to share and help others. So I appreciate all the time that those of you I've talked to. Angela, I know I've seen you at the meetup. I don't think we've had the pleasure to talk yet, though. And T, we welcome. I am currently started classes for my license. So Eric, last time I saw you at the meetup. I asked for your opinion on that, and then Dylan gave me encouragement as well months ago. So that's going well, but just trying to eventually expand our portfolio, my wife and I, and maybe if we could talk about if we have time. I'm just curious about joint ventures because I've mentioned it in previous conversations with some people that I do have family members that have seen kind of the small successes that my wife and I have had, and I'm just not sure how to approach that, and any info on that is appreciated. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about joint ventures. If you have anything specific you want to discuss tonight, I've done a few.
Okay.
Awesome. And has there been any? I know you said you're getting your license. Any changes since the last meeting on your investment side?
I just finally got around to getting a bookkeeper, so
okay,
it's a small win, but I just finally getting organized in that case. So
awesome. All right, cool. And then Tiwi sent his in. He's based here in Cincinnati as well. He's got a 10-unit property. He said he's trying to refi his 10 units for 1.3. Do you know what you have into it roughly? And he's also long-term goal is looking to grow his portfolio to 50 units, trying to find a cash flow goal. So he's into that his first deal for about $1 million. So nice equity there. Yeah. So he's basically here to learn about how to reach his goals. So one thing that I've encouraged people to do in the past, and it's something we used to do in the mastermind group I met a lot of these guys in, but after we get off these calls, if you can post your monthly goals, I think it's really helpful to for a few reasons. One, it's just making you think about them. Two, it's making you write them down. And three, it's putting them out there so you're accountable to yourself and everyone else. And I know a lot of people struggle with that, or they feel embarrassed or shy. And I know when I was a brand new investor, I felt that way too. So, I think it's good though. So I hope all of you will do that. And then they can be something, they could be like Todd said, my goal this month is to find a bookkeeper, but at least he's keeping that in his mind. It doesn't have to be that I'm going to go out and buy, 100 units this month or anything like that. Just be realistic, be real about what you're trying to do, and put your goals out there for the world. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys sharing. I appreciate you guys joining. Dylan, I think the only thing you might not have covered in here is, kind of your short and long-term goals that you might have touched on a little bit, but if you want to cover those.
Yeah, no, and you're right, Joe. I need to actually sit down and make concrete ones. Really, it's just been the abstract, build a business to where I'm not working 46 hours a week and I can work the 20 to 30 and deals are still coming in. I want $20,000 a month in passive income. And I don't really care how I get there, whether that's through the business or through cash flowing real estate. I think the business right now is honestly the better aspect because it's just a more scalable model, and one I can kind of create myself. So I'll have to think about it, but that's my answer for now.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. And I feel like I always towards the end of the year, I think a lot of us get kind of focused on goal setting and, we're like, okay, what are we going to do with our goals for the next year? And I've tried the last couple of years to be more consistent about thinking about them, monthly, weekly, even daily, depending on what I have going on. And, I think the more time you spend on planning helps you on the execution side as well. So, yeah, so for me, I'm Joe Cornwell, located in Cincinnati, and this is where I invest. Right now, my portfolio is about 75 doors, and I think it's 11 properties. My short-term investment goals, I just bought a 28 unit, so I'm heavily focused on we're going to basically turn all 28 units of those. Long-term, so my next short-term goal is 10,000 a month gross cash flow. Or net cash flow, I'm sorry. And, I hopefully will hit that by next year. And then my long-term goal is 50,000 a month in cash flow. That I think ultimately will allow me to do all the things I want to do with my life. And that's kind of my end goal. So whatever portfolio I have to do to accomplish that, that's the goal. And the reason why I started this group was to help learn, help share my experiences, and help me meet new people. So that's what I'm hoping to get from this group. So one thing I wanted to touch on, I know we're at about an hour here, so we've got a few more minutes. If anyone has to go, feel free to jump out whenever you got to go. But I know people earlier were asking about the lease option. So couple points I want to make about it. I think so my from an investment standpoint, my favorite asset right now, or what I want to do, is buy more mid-sized to large multifamily. That's a space I've been trying to focus on relatively unsuccessfully the past couple of years. Like I said, I was finally able to buy a 28 unit, and that's as close as I've gotten to getting into the bigger properties. But the difficulty right now with that space is, just like everything else, rates are, anywhere from 6.5% to 8%, depending on, what you're trying to do. So it makes it extremely difficult to make those properties cash flow, make the numbers work. And I think the retail market, residential market, is more quickly adjusting to the realities of the new space we're in. And I don't think commercial real estate has caught up as quickly. I know the last few multifamily listings I've seen have been listed basically where you need a 3 or 4% interest rate to cash flow. The problem is a lot of these properties are still being purchased, at relatively high prices based on the interest rate. So it makes it extremely difficult. There's still a ton of competition in that space. There's still a ton of money out there looking for a place to go. I could even see it becoming more common where larger multifamily is bought with all cash, and you have people who are basically willing to take, a 6 to 10% return in total. I think that's not out of the realm of possibilities. All of that's to say, it's going to make it increasingly difficult for somebody like me trying to get into the mid-size multifamily space. The reason why I preface everything I'm saying with that is because I think the opportunity is going to come, as we kind of mentioned earlier, with on-market deals. And if I have to transition back to what I've been doing the last 6-7 years, then I'll continue buying single family or small multifamily deals, because I think right now those are actually adjusting quicker than, like I said, the bigger stuff. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity with on-market deals. I think prices are already quickly dropping as properties sit on market. I think that a lot of the people buying right now are looking for relatively turnkey deals, and all the, the labor shortages, the supply chain issues, all those things are still relevant. They've gotten a little bit better, but they're not anywhere near where they were pre-pandemic. So all of those forces are continuing to push people and buyers towards more turnkey stuff. And the reason why I bring that up is because the people who are willing to take on a rehab, willing to do a little bit more work, are going to be able to find better deals. And I think those opportunities are going to continue into 2023. And if the Fed does what, they alluded to today, and even if they slow the pace of raising rates, it sounds like they're going to continue raising rates based on what they said today. So back to why I think lease options are going to be a really viable strategy, is because those are great for single family properties. So if you can find something that makes sense as a rental and do a minor shift to taking a little bit more time to find the right tenant as a lease option buyer, it's going to create a lot of opportunity. And so I'll give the one example, and I'm not an expert on lease options by any means. I'm doing my first one right now. It's my first one I've ever done, but I was able to find a property on the west side of Cincinnati. I think I bought it for 50, and ultimately I'll probably end up putting about 40, not 40, maybe like 30, 35 into it. And I'm going to refi it for 110. So I'm going to pull out about 20K and profits. And once it's already rented out, but once I have the new kind of PITI mortgage on it, even with 7.5% rate, it'll cash flow almost $400 a month. All of that sounds okay, whatever, that's great, right? That's just like a good bird deal, like any other good bird deal. But the beauty of it is, this deal in particular, I am not doing any maintenance. I don't pay any utilities. The only time I could possibly have to kick in any money on a repair is if it's a single item over $10,000. Okay. Now, this particular deal, instead of the tenant paying me a cash down payment, so typically on a lease option, you're going to have anywhere from like 5 to 20% as a down payment on the lease towards the purchase. Instead of that, this particular deal I did with a subcontractor of mine where he did all the renovation. So that's why we have so much equity in this house, because, you know, he did all the labor. I just bought all the material. So obviously that's a unique situation, but I think all lease options are kind of a little bit of a unique situation. That's the difficulty in them. You have to find the right house for the right tenant. And in my opinion, you find the tenant first and then you find the house, because the other contractors who work for my company saw what I'm doing with this guy and now they want to do it.
Hey, Joe, can I ask you
Sure.
a quick question? How do you, on the option, how do you project, or what are you setting your price at? Or like, what are the terms on that? Because
Yes.
I could see like that. I totally see where you're coming from, but then like maybe that coming back to haunt you if we get another hot market, or you know, it drops. And I'm just curious, like,
Yeah. So in this particular deal, the way it's set up, so I'm taking my profit on the front end. So I'm cashing out 20,000 in profit in and above my cash investment into the deal. Okay. So I'm taking basically a 20K profit plus 400 a month for up to 5 years. That's our term of the option. Okay. So it's a lease with 5 years. Now, this is a deal because I'm basically trying to help this guy. I'm basically just being the bank, even though I'm getting a loan on it. You know, after we're done, I'm going to get my money out. I'm basically being his bank until he can go get his own loan. And this particular deal, all he's going to pay when he buys this is the balance of that note. So we agreed up front on this is what the note is going to be. So in this case, it'll be like 110. And, you know, if he stays 5 years and it's 95,000, the house could be worth $500,000 and he just inherited $400,000 in equity. You know, this is like a C- neighborhood. I don't think that's going to happen. But again, you know, if it does, good for him, because I'm getting paid on the front end. I'm getting paid every month. And most importantly, I have relatively no risk because I don't have any money in the deal. I'm not doing any maintenance. I'm not doing any utilities. Everything's already new and fixed. So we already renovated the whole house. And so my worst case scenario is he just ups and leaves me high and dry. And I got probably $30,000 worth of free labor. And now I own a house that I don't really want in a neighborhood I don't really want, but I have no money in it. Right. So if I sell it, then whatever I profit I get, or if I have to go re-rent it, whatever cash flow I get. Right.
Yeah.
So that's my worst case scenario. But a typical deal, you're right. A typical deal, you're going to have price increases built in. So, you know, to me, these remind me more of like commercial leases. That's almost kind of what they are, because another clause in my lease is if taxes or insurance go up, the tenant pays. Like I don't pay it. So like right now we have a flat rate of like, let's say 1,200. If taxes go up $50 a month next year, it's built right in. His rent goes up to $1,250. If the insurance goes up $100, you know, it's $1,350, whatever that number is. So I don't really care. Now, obviously, you know, I'm trying to be a good landlord and I want him to get the best deal he can, but it's like, I'm protected. It's almost like, it's really a triple net lease. That's really what it is. Because, you know, like in commercial, I don't pay taxes. I don't pay insurance. I don't pay maintenance. I don't pay utilities.
Yeah.
So I know day one, this is my net cash flow number and it's never going to change for 5 years. So, I mean, you know, to me, again, if this wasn't a guy I was trying to help, then obviously I could build in rent increases like a normal lease, you know, so, you know, I am kind of boxing myself in, but again, the whole point of this was to kind of do him a favor. Yeah. But even while doing him a favor and creating this win-win situation, I'm like, holy shit, like these could be really powerful if I was actually, you know, kind of turning this into a system like I have with my other rentals. So anyway, I think it's something you guys should definitely look at. And the reason why I think it's going to become really prevalent is people who have cash or can get financing are going to be able to create potential buyers through these lease options where maybe they have bad credit but good income. Yep. And that's the perfect, you know, type of tenant for a lease option.
If I went and go get a loan right now, I couldn't. And even though I could probably pay for a house with cash, like they would not give me a loan.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Dylan, if Dylan didn't have anywhere to live and he was trying to, you know, get into something he wanted ownership with, you know, Dylan would be the perfect type of tenant to do a lease option. And the cool thing with lease options is it's like, it doesn't have to be a $50,000 house like I bought. You know, this could be a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 house. Now, obviously, the more money, the more risk. But I'm just saying that you have a wide gamut of lease option buyers or tenants. Like there's a ton of people out there. And I think it's going to get increasingly more popular because, people aren't going to be able to qualify for loans.
Yeah.
So
the one in Milford,
credit,
real quick, I'm sorry, not to
ahead.
interrupt, but I'm buying it for 170. I'm going to put like $5,000 in it and it'll probably be worth like 215. When I refi, I'll probably be anywhere from 15 to 20K out of the hole, but my lease option fee is probably going to be anywhere from 10 to 15 grand. So I'm going to, again, have like no money in the deal and then basically have like no risk. So similar to Joe's, except it's just a $200,000 house in Milford.
Yeah.
So Dylan, you bought that with the mindset, the lease option when you purchased it?
No, I didn't. I was just going to do a distributable rental, but I just came up the other day, like I should try this. And it was just serendipitous that Joe also had the same scenario happening.
Yeah. And like I said, I would have never, like, this was never in my wheelhouse. And, maybe this will be the only one I ever do, but it's definitely something I'm more interested in because like I said, so my employees who work for me saw this, basically, me doing this, and all the, intricate details, but they said, they know that I'm basically helping this guy get a house, right? Their lease option. And now I've had 2 other employees who have been good employees who've worked for me for a long time. Do I know what they make? I know they make enough money to afford something like this and their wives or whatever, and are now interested in doing it. Right. So now I have 2 more potential lease option tenants. Again, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't this type of deal. I want it to be a no money deal at the end of the day. Right. So yeah, I might buy the house with cash and fix it up, but I want to be able to refi my money out and they're going to know roughly what their payment's going to be up front. And we're going to agree to all this before I even buy the house. Right. So I know going in, who's my end buyer, who's my end tenant, all those terms are going to be worked out ahead of time, and so to me, this is a very low risk way to do it. And obviously I'm not saying everyone's in this situation where you have employees, you can just, hand houses out like Oprah. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like there are people out there in your world, in your network that you can match to a house before you pull the trigger. And so to me, that's the way I'm going to approach it. I'm not going to like Dylan's kind of doing it the other way, which I think is the way most people would do it. Right. But Dylan is also safe because he's in a B plus area. Worst case, if he can't find a good lease option tenant, then he's just going to, make it a normal rental. Right. I mean, so anyway, I think it's a really good strategy that everyone should definitely consider. And I think that, back to the initial premise, though, just on market deals in general and single family deals in general, I think are going to have a lot more momentum. And so for me personally, I'm looking at shifting my strategy. I've been heavily focused on multifamily and trying to do these big deals. And I'm still, and if the right deal came along, I'm happy to do it. I'm still focused on trying to do more student rentals. And I don't want to be like Dylan mentioned earlier, I don't want to be, the shiny object syndrome. I don't want to be bouncing around, from this to this to this to this. But I also do want to be able to take the right opportunities when they come within reason, so whatever that looks like. And that's kind of always what I've done. I've always just kind of bought the best deal in front of me the last 6 years. But unfortunately, part of being an investor is kind of, expanding your war chest and being able to take on different things that you may not be comfortable with, so yeah, any questions on any of those topics?
One thing I just mentioned real quick is you mentioned with the multifamily space, people buying 3 and 4 caps. The 10-year treasury right now is 4.12%.
Yep.
So who in their right mind, when they can just go buy a 10-year treasury and yield 4.2% that's backed by the U.S. government, is going to buy a 4 cap deal in any kind of real estate? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't, but, prime example, I know a lot of you in here know Tim Gentle. We had a long discussion the other day about a 34 unit that just came on market. And I don't know if you saw it. I think it was in Franklin. But anyway, that's up in his area. And we had a long talk about the offer and everything and all the numbers and all the metrics. And somebody basically came in at close to list price. And it's like a 6 cap at best in Franklin, which isn't, like an A area by any means. And it needed a ton of work. So it doesn't make sense, but I think there's so much money still floating around out there that's looking for a home that people are going to keep buying dumb deals.
Can I ask you guys a question on similar to that? Like you were saying earlier, Joe, on like the small multifamilies, like What are you guys seeing, Dylan and Eric, too? Like, are are people throwing cash offers at this stuff? Like, because of the same thing, I'm seeing these things. It just there's absolutely no way they make any sense.
So right now, there's a good example. There's a place on Morton, which is in Hyde Park,
Oh
four
yeah,
family, all one bedrooms.
yeah.
Just was listed at $599, sold 2 weeks later, cash for $650. And I was like, there's no way I can make this work. And so my only thought is it's like someone who needs to depreciate taxes or 1031 for money. That's the only thing I can think of that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah.
But so yes, to answer your question, there are still people out there. There's a duplex in Wyoming that's just sold for 400,000. Like, so I don't know, man. I can't make some of these numbers work. As Joe said, there's a ton of money. I'll let him to speak to it. But
yeah,
the only way I see it is 1031 money and people bonus depreciating, because that goes away after this year.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've seen actually more insanity in like the retail market. As I've mentioned now a couple of times, like I'm in the process of buying another primary live-in flip, and like we've been offering on houses for 9 months, very, not like super, focused on it or anything, but if a house came up that fit our very specific criteria, we go look at it and make an offer. And I wasn't super motivated, so I wasn't being overly aggressive on any of these, but we had multiple houses where, let's just say it was listed for 525. We offered, 580, and then we would lose to an all cash offer, no contingencies, at 650. So these are, suburban houses in Milford selling for 125,000. And what's interesting, and I think Eric and I talked about this at the last meetup, but it's like let's say 200 to 400 range is, unfortunately, now, as crazy as it sounds to say, that's like your first time buyer now. Because in Milford, there's really not a whole lot under 200 at all anywhere. Like the worst neighborhoods are like 200 or more. So your first time buyers are buying in that 200 to 400 range, unless and this is generalized to like any, like, B or B plus suburb, like in most of the country, right? So this is not a Cincinnati thing. Those people are the ones who are very tightly holding on to their budget and payment. And they're just able to get approved for what they can afford, right? Or they're going to max out what they can afford. The 400 to like 800 range, that's where we were looking. That is like a totally different ball game. Like nobody in that space gave two shits at all. Like they don't care about the rates. They don't care about, contingencies. A lot of those people are buying cash. And I think, like Dylan said, I think it's a lot of people who are selling houses in, coastal cities, New York, California, Florida, Texas, and they're coming to the Midwest for whatever particular reason brought them here, whether it's job or they're just trying to get out of their area. And these people are selling houses that they have that kind of equity in, and they're willing to pay cash here, and they're willing to pay 100, 150 over the market value because they want that product, and they don't care about anything else. They don't care what the comps say. They don't care what the rates are. If you're paying cash, obviously you don't care about the rates anyway. But even the people who are getting loans like we are, most of the people we were competing with don't care about rates. So it's interesting to see how competition in that, like 400 to 800 space or 500 to 800 space is not at all changed since the peak of the market, in my opinion, and just in what I'm seeing. And there's less buyers there, but they're way more serious. They're way more competitive, and they're less budget, sensitive, let's say. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing. And then, again, like Mason, Indian Hill, Montgomery, Blue Ash, all those kind of, B to A areas, they're all seeing the same exact thing. Sycamore, like all those areas are just as competitive. Eric, I know we talked a little bit about that. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you're pretty much right. Like we have one coming up in Montgomery in 2 weeks. It'll be at like 550. So I'll be able to update you a little bit better. But we had listings last year in Indian Hill, Montgomery, both above 800,000. And like the Montgomery one was overpriced a little bit. And I had people come into my open house from California, and they're like, this is how much house you can get here for $800,000. Like, this is a steal. And I was like, okay. I'm like, it's pricey, but, and they're like, seriously, $800,000 for this? And I was like, yeah. It's like, damn.
Now it's 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, and that's what's interesting to me is like, you hear all these people talking about it, if you're on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, like I am, like, everyone across the country is doom and gloom and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, there are very specific pockets that are getting hammered right now in certain markets that were like way, way overpriced, like a lot higher than Cincinnati. But I don't see a massive drop off happening, especially in the nicer areas. You know what I mean? I just don't, because there's just so much demand. You have people from 2019, 2020, 2021 that could not get a house no matter what they did. And there's people are all still trying to buy. You know what I mean? Like your upper, like 10% of renters, let's say, who can afford a really nice house, they're all still looking to buy, and the competition just hasn't dropped off. Now, you might not be getting 20 offers on a house, like on Eric's example in Montgomery, he might not get 20 offers on that house, but I bet he still gets 3 or 4, and now, don't get me wrong, they still have to look good. They still have to be relatively updated, and they have to be priced right. I'm not saying you can just throw anything on the wall and it's going to stick, but what I'm saying is that the ones that do look good, are priced well, and are in this nicer, like top third of neighborhoods, they're going to sell, and they're going to sell quickly, and there's still going to be a lot of competition. And that's why for flippers, like, I know none of you really flip, but like something I've been talking to a lot of my flipper clients about is like, I think flipping in like sub 300 right now is super risky, like super, super risky. Unless you're in like one of those, again, like top 3, top 5 neighborhoods, it's less risky. But like I had a house in Marymount that was priced well, and Marymount's one of the, the top end neighborhoods, and it's still set. It still took us like, a price drop in like 3 or 4 weeks to sell. And that's at that starter home price. And that's where you struggle.
It's taken like, the weird thing is it doesn't matter, like up to the 400 price range. What I'm noticing is it's taking property sitting for 2 or 3 weeks, because what you're getting is not that buyers don't want houses. They just want them at good prices. So what I'm hearing from every agent I've talked to is buyers will save properties. Like check Zillow, like we check the saves on a property. The saves are almost the same. Buyers are saving properties and they're waiting 2 or 3 weeks, and then they're walking the house with their agents like 3 weeks later and trying to get the price down. And what's funny is that happened twice this month, like twice in the past like 2 weeks. I've had a property that's been sitting on the market for like 25 days. I go and show a buyer to it, and we're like one of 4 offers that day. Like we'll go on a Saturday, like 3 weeks later, we're like, hey, let's go a little bit lower. We'll be saving you some money. And then the agent's like, I'm literally not kidding you. We have 2 other offers, so we're asking for highest and best. I'm like, of course, like we're back to this. So yeah, it's gonna ebb and flow. It's gonna be weird. But the thing I sent Dylan earlier, like to keep in mind, is the Fed chair Powell literally came out and said he just wants to break housing. Like that's literally his words on the tweet today was like, he's like, housing has to come back significantly from where it's at now. So just be super conservative with everything you do.
And bankruptcies and foreclosures are going up in these non-A parts areas of town, just as a counterpoint to everything we were just saying. Like you get kind of west of 75, 71, you are starting to see an increase in some of that stuff.
And that's why, something I've been talking to my clients about, like my buy and hold clients, right now is not the time to go pick up a duplex in a D neighborhood, in my opinion. Like to me, that is the worst thing you could do, because if we do have a big correction, those are the areas that are going to get hammered. There's going to be little to no demand on the rent side and on the buy side, so you can't get out of it. I think now more than ever, it's more important to try to be in that CB area as much as possible. And I know it's more expensive, and I know there's more competition there, but I think you'll be very happy that you stayed in those better areas if we do see a major correction. Like I said, I'm not really one of the doom and gloom, people, because until I see the demand drop off, it doesn't make sense to me how, don't get me wrong, demand has dropped, but I'm saying until demand drops to relative zero, prices are not going to come down the way a lot of people are projecting them to. And I don't think rates at 10% are going to do it. I just don't, because your retail people who are buying have to buy. That's not going to change. And even if rates are 10% for investors, where else are you going to get your money? Where else are you going to put your money that is as relatively stable and that has a better 10-year outlook? Like, do you trust the stock market right now? Like, I don't. I don't really do stocks at all, but I'm just saying I never trust the stocks, and I sure as hell don't trust stocks right now. So even at rates at 10%, I'm still going to be buying. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. So, well, I could talk all night, guys. I don't want to keep you here. If you have any final questions or thoughts, feel free to chime in.
Just want to say thank you, guys. I hope to.
Thank you so much for joining us, man. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully you can join us more. And we'd love to get your thoughts and input in the group. And Tiwi, hopefully you can get your headset going next time. We'd love to.
I don't know. I just had bad luck.
And now it's working. Oh man, you were hiding. Well, next time we'll definitely get you to jump in here with us. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate everybody joining, and I will see you in 2 weeks. So. Good luck out there. Hope you all hit your goals. And like I said, please take a couple minutes and post your goals in the group when you get a chance.
All right. Peace out,
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you
a good
guys.
evening.
Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, Dylan.